late 19th century, and there is Punjab of the 15th and early 16th century, and the Punjab that goes to Orissa, and Punjab that goes to, somewhere to the bottom of Tibet, Punjab that goes to let's say Afghanistan, and to Baghdad, to Iran, and Punjab that is also traveling. So I really traveling down south. I really wonder, with the kind of journeys that he undertook. I mean, what is it that he is trying to bring together? Not just in terms of poetry, not just in terms of excitement about the life that he sees, but primarily also about the possibility of creating something new. And therefore, he keeps on creating sort of, these in-between languages. And those in-between languages are embedded, they're very central to his poetry, whether it is Arti or the other, hymn that we've included in these 5 tracks, which is Vismad Nad, Vismad Ved, Vismad Ji, Vismad Ped. When he's talking about Vismad Ped, wondrous is the difference. I mean, the man is amazing. This guru of ours, when he's speaking about the celebration of diversity and plurality, and he's talking about Vismad Ped, and in the process he's creating a kind of an in-between language. If he goes to Iran, he's creating an in-between language. It's not totally Persian, but it is a kind of a mix, when he says, Yak arz guftam peshto dargos kun kartar, Hakka kareem kabir tu, be-aab parwardigar. So, you can understand that it is Persian, but it is also something else. So this constant desire to create an, in between linguistic sort of, desire, in between cultural desire, is something that has kept us in thrall for many years, not just me. I mean, when we were, actually I remember, when we were staying at your place in Birmingham, Panditji will come to me every morning and he will talk to me about a novel that he was reading at that time of Tagore. It was called Home in the World. And he was reading that novel. And we will have discussions about nationalism. We'll have discussions about the agency of women as the carrier of modern sensibility and so on and so forth. At that time, all these things will come up. These threads are really sort of, far, and, these are really stretched and they're really scattered. They're wonderful. So, I can go on talking about this for a long time, but I think we must get back to you, and I'm sure Deepak Bhai will have something really wonderful to say as well.
This is great. I mean, there were so many points that you brought up just now, which I think we should probably come back to. Shall I hand it over? I mean, the one thing is you referred to the 5 tracks. I wonder if you want to outline what the 5 are, and I think we'll be giving a sampling as well, won't we? As well.
Wonderful.
And invite Deepak and Preetam and Amjad to come in as well, if you'd like.
We actually started with Aarti. Aarti was our initial impulse. We had this invite from Canada. There is this gentleman who has shifted to Canada from Karnataka, who's married to, I think, either a Canadian lady or an Irish lady. He runs this very important festival there called the Indian Summer Festival, one of the biggest festivals, attended by hundreds of thousands of people. And his name is Sirish Rao. He was the person who put me in touch with this very fine gentleman who is a sound wizard of a kind. His name is Ruby Singh, and Ruby Singh has been trying tirelessly to raise money for us to come over and record. Aarti was at the point of beginning. Aarti was the point of beginning. Then we looked at when we were looking at Aarti, we looked at 2 other. I'm trying to explain something. Just 1 minute. So, Aarti was the point of beginning, and then I looked at I looked at this whole idea of Genesis, and he is now talking about Genesis in terms of negatives. So negation is a very, very important impulse. So whether we go to Rumi, when he is, trying to work out an idea of the self through negations, when he says, Chetad Veer Musalmanan ki man khudra namidanam, na tarsa na Yahudam man na gabram na Musalmanam, na Zindam, na Chinam, na Bulgaro Saksinam, na Zamulke Iraqiyam, na Khake Khurasanam, bagara bagara. I was looking also at Kabir. Kabir also is sort of, going through a series of negations when he says, Sakya, Waghar Sabse Nyara, where he says, Na Chandana hi, na Suraj, etc., etc. So he is talking about Jahan nahi sukh dukh, Saach jhoot nahi, Paap na punna pasara, Jahan nahi din rain, Chandana hi na Suraj, bin jyoti ujara. When I'm looking at Tagore, I'm looking at Baba Nanak, and he says, Arbad narbat tundukara, Gagan na tarna, Hukum apara, Na din rain na chand na suraj, Sun samad lagaida. I see a kind of a kindred sort of relationship that evolves over centuries, over people who are traveling, whether they're traveling from Central Asia to India, or sort of skirting India and going to Turkey, or people who are going in reverse journeys from India, like Baba Nanak. He is going through Afghanistan, and he's going to Iran, he's going to Iraq, and so on and so forth. So these reverse journeys become very, very fascinating, and also a kind of a kindred sort of, contact between these people, where the idea of negation becomes negation as an articulation of the self. I mean, it is the most fascinating idea, and it happens in Guru Nanak so often. Wonderful. So we decided to do this Genesis, Arbad Narbat Tundukara. And the third thing that we did was the whole idea of wonderment. That I look at this whole creation and it fills me with wonderment. So, there is no negation of senses as the primary sort of mode of experiencing. And from there going on to, so the materiality is not negated. But from there going on to a larger sort of, understanding which is reflective, which is, which is also abstract, and trying to understand the larger impulses. And within that, the politics. When in Vismadnad he says, Vismad Pukh, Vismad Pog. When I look at the hunger and when I look at satiation, I am filled with wonderment, I am wonderstruck. That, for me, is the essential political underlying sort of, trace. That is why, for him, Pai Lalo would always stand for him always in preference to Malik Pago. That is why he will be questioning the state as well. So these three things, these three impulses, ode to cosmos, which is the Arti, ode to wonderment, which is the Vismadnad, and ode to the Genesis. These three things we thought we will do, and we did many different compositions. All three, in fact, Arti we did in 3 different compositions, and they are there in this album that we've launched today.
Shall we have some samples right now? I think it'd be wonderful. Outlined, or is that?
Pritam Da, where are you?
So, just a moment, please.
Give a slight sample of Urban Narvat firstly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Taran na jagana hukam amara.
In this, I find the whole idea of string instruments. I mean, I'm telling you, singing is okay. I mean, singing is one part of the story because the text has to be sung. But amazing string instruments. I mean, the kind of inspiration that I draw from these instruments, there is absolutely no word in which I can express my gratitude for two reasons. One, the string instruments come together so beautifully, but secondly, and even more importantly, I think it all happens on the spot. I mean, I didn't know that they were going to play it like this, and this thing was going to gel like this. I mean, this is something that only they can explain. So how they respond to this poem, which is a cosmic poem, I mean, I don't know how these three gentlemen have been able to manage this. Pritam da, kuch kahiye?
Yeah, okay. So I start. Well, musically, it's a very challenging track because the background I come from is a pure Indian classical musical background. And there you have to maintain the ascending and the descending order of each and every raga that you are performing. And so, I mean, relating to the music, relating to the poetry is a different thing, but how do you place yourself in that context is very important. And how do you relate, how do you respond, reciprocate? So it has given me always a very fine sense of experimentation so that I can go out of the traditional boundaries and the rules of the rhythmic structures and the melodic structures. And then I can, I mean, within one sphere, I can go out. I mean, it can be called as like freedom within the discipline. I mean, you are disciplined, but you are going out and you are free to experiment with the notes. With this very track, Arbat Narbat, actually I was very much, because Madanji mentioned one thing, that it was happening right then. So it was a momentary thing which came out as a consequence of some environment, some poetry, and some musical inspiration. Because the composition of this Arbat Narbat track is based on a very minor scale. If I am right, Deepak bhai, is based on a minor scale, and it is a very touching and very sensitive, very delicate, very sensitive kind of a melody that you can be poised, holding the instrument sarod, which is known as its terao, its poise, its calm and smooth and soothing expressions. Holding this instrument, it was giving me such a pleasure to play these notes one by one and not rushing through. And particularly the ang, the portion that I have performed is called jor in the Indian classical music system, which comes right after the alap. Alap is non-rhythmic expression of a raga, and jor is the rhythmic expression of a raga without any percussion being played over there. So, halaki jor can be played with the percussion as well, with the pakhawaj, with the tabla as well. But normally, the instrumentalists prefer to play jor without the percussion, but in the rhythm. So that is a portion that I tried over here because I was thinking that how can I place, because it's in a rhythm, but it's in a very poised manner. So what can I do?
May I just mention two things?
Yeah.
One is that there is, this really almost sort of magical economy with which the instrument is played here, both sarod and the guitar. And the second thing is that there is a sense of movement, a spherical movement, as if it is not happening on earth, it is happening somewhere outside in this space. So you see a very slow movement somewhere in the cosmos. I mean, I don't know. This is how I responded.
Yeah, and it is also happening in the not in the foreground. It is not forcing on to some just a thin curtain where you can see through. The actual melody is happening right over there. The poetry, the melody, each and every work is happening right beyond the curtain. But you are at the back and you are seeing through the curtain. So it is that gives you the sense of this kind of like what I tried. I just tried to do that.
Deepak bhai, aap kahan chupe hain? Where are you?
I'm listening very intently to what.
Please. Now it's your turn.
In terms of composition, this happens very often with us when we meet. Listen to what Madan has to say, and then Pritam will lay down a bass line, or rather a melodic line, and I work around that. And then I find that there is a lot of strength and I think conviction too in keeping sometimes things steady as they are. In the sense, you're not trying to get out of the mode, you're not trying to, you're not doing too much of improvisation because it's meant to be like this. But within that steadiness and within that repetitive steadiness, there is a world. And I think we had this experience both with Sakhiya and especially with Arbad.
Absolutely.
Where Pritam and I are basically interplaying with each other. We're not playing the same thing. We're playing two different lines, two different tracks. It's like going to a studio and having two different melodies going on throughout, while Madan's voice stays constant at the back. And of course, when Amjad comes in and then he puts in his percussion and Char Chand.
Amjad bhai, let us bring you in after we have played, this thing, a clip of Vismat Naad, which is an entirely different thing. एक मिनट यार बिस्मात का थोड़ा सुन लें.
Yes. Vishamad Ved Vishamad Diya Vishamad Vishamad Naad Vishamad Ved Vishamad Diya Vishamad Ved Vishamad Rupa Vishamad Rang Vishamad Rupa Vishamad Rang Vishamad Nage.
ये क्या हुआ? What happened? We lost sound. ओहो.
Somebody muted that जहाँ पे वो मदन जी का ID आ रहा है. So maybe that's when I lost the sound. So just unmute yourself, and maybe then it will play. It's.
This is.
Madan ji, I can see your ID as Pritam Ghoshal and Pritam's ID as Madan Gopal Singh. So when
Rekha ji, the problem is that I am very bad at managing this
When
technology.
No
Preetham
problem.
is sitting, that has been muted. Preetham, can you unmute yourself?
I don't know who else.
Wherever
has-
your computer, whatever you're using, that has been muted.
Yeah.
Mine.
No, Preetham जहाँ बैठे.
Preetham sir, आपका mute है ना?
He should unmute and then we can do it.
आप शुरू से करिए जरा इसको.
Sorry, so sorry. He's going to play once again.
Vishamadhanada, Vishamada Veda, Vishamada Jiya, Vishamada Vishamadhanada, Vishamada Veda, Vishamada Jiya, Vishamada Veda, Vishamada Rupa, Vishamada Vishamada Rupa, Vishamada Ranga, Vishamada Nage, Hare Vishamada Vana, Vishamada Pani, Vishamada Agni, Jai Bedani, Vishamada Datta, Vishamada Khani, Vishamada Datti, Vishamada Khani, Vishamada Sad Lage Prani, Vishamada Sad Lage Prani, Vishamada Sajo, Vishamada Vijo, Vishamada Sajo, Vishamada Vijo, Vishamada Pukka, Vishamada Pukka, Vishamada Pukka, Vishamada Pukka, Vishamada Pukka, Vishamada Pukka. Vishamada Stikta, Vishamada Stala, Vishamada Ujada, Vishamada Ra, Vishamada Nere, Vishamada
Before we invite Amjad Bhai, I want to just say one thing. I was deeply fascinated by this series of, oppositions. In fact, when I was looking at Vismad Pog, I was actually reminded of this, thousands of people and millions actually walking back to their villages during the Corona period with no work left for them in the cities. So that was an image that was uppermost in my mind when I was looking at Vismad Pog, because we were sitting in our houses, and at 5 o'clock we were, beating our plates with our spoons and all that. But there were these hapless people out on the road, walking with I don't know what courage, I don't know with what spirit. Now, this was completely different from Arbat Narbat. I'm sorry, the quality on this is not, I think we are able to capture on this about 45% of how it sounds. But Amjad Bhai, where are you?
Hi.
हाँ, Amjad Bhai, ये जरा हमें बताइए कि again this happened. We had not planned it like this, and the beat was right there and then. I don't know how it happened.
जी
बताइए।
ये आप बिल्कुल सही फरमा रहे हैं। आई थिंक हम लोग लॉस एंजलिस में बैठे हुए थे जब इसको हम लोग रिकॉर्ड कर रहे थे
जी।
और आपने अचानक से ये कॉम्पोजिशन शुरू की थी एंड समहाउ दीपक भाई ज्वाइंड इन एंड उन्होंने कुछ एक क्रिएट किया। देन प्रीतम दादा ने एक बहुत खूबसूरत इसका फ्रेज बनाया और समहाउ ये जो पैटर्न जो मैं बजा रहा हूँ ये बेसिकली ये थोड़ा सा इन्फ्लुएंस है अफगानी फोक से जो मैं पैटर्न बजा रहा हूँ इसमें। अफगानिस्तानी फोक से इन्फ्लुएंस्ड है, और राजस्थान में भी इसका यूज किया जाता है इस पैटर्न का, लेकिन समहाउ इस कॉम्पोजिशन में उस सुबह ये कुछ ऐसा फिट हुआ कि वो हम लोग किसी और ही रंग में रंग गए, और फिर हम उसको रोक नहीं पाए, और ये अपने आप ही रिकॉर्ड हो गया, कंपोज हुआ, और आपने बहुत लाजवाब, उस वक्त आपका मूड भी बहुत अच्छा था सुबह।
जी 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 जी,
और हम सबका मूड अच्छा हो गया, और फिर हम लोगों ने इसको उसी वक्त फॉर्चुनेटली रिकॉर्ड भी किया।
So दीपक भाई, ये फ्रेज बताइए, आपने जब शुरू किया, so he says that you inspired him to sort of, you know, take up this beat.
And then Madanji started singing, and then Pritam brought in a line, and we just took it from there.
Amjad ji, can you play a little bit also? I think we can hear one at a time.
Amjad ji बताइए ना जरा.
हाँ, थोड़ा सा.
You want me to play or?
हाँ, बताइए क्या था वो, मतलब.
लगता है पैटर्न,
जो पैटर्न है, वो जो पैटर्न है वो अफगानी फोक म्यूजिक से इन्फ्लुएंस्ड है, तो मैं बजा के दिखाता हूँ आपको.
जी बताइए.
तो पहला जो पैटर्न उसमें हमने शुरू किया था, दैट्स कॉल्ड छपकी, नॉर्मल है वो. एंड सॉन्ग का जो पैटर्न है साइन लाइन का, वो है
और आपने क्या किया था प्रीतम दा?
So basically this is a phrase which is coming on and off, and it is like any other song, it is not playing continuously because it is a very fast number, and if I would have kept on playing the same phrase over and over again, then it might look the track as overcrowded. So that's why I chose to come in between whenever Madanji is not singing and Deepak Bhai is not playing, or the music needs that kind of a space. So I'm coming on and off, I mean coming in, going out, this kind of things. So something like this.
But yeah,
great.
Oh, before may I just make a small point here? I think Rekha ji is online too. Rekha ji? I just want to say thank you to Rekha ji wherever she is, and also to Narinder Kushnur, I think, who helped us with the sound. Had the idea to put.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Rekha ji.
Because I saw Pritam the moment he muted himself, and I realized कि वो sound वहाँ से क्या, because वो मदन जी का idea है उस पर ना. I think you're sharing that, and you're sharing from your side. So.
And hi everybody.
Thank you. Hi Narinder.
Hi Madan ji, how are you? Hi Rekha ji, how are you?
प्रीतम दास, जरा विस्मात का दूसरा जो था वो क्या था? एक क्लिप था, है आपके पास?
I think I think this is the one.
नानक बुझण पुरैवाल नानक बुझण
When I was, when I was looking at this poem, this hymn, this idea of wonderment, it occurred to me like a lure. It was like I had to obsessively sort of get into this one word, Vismad, 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 Vismad. In fact, the recording that we made in LA, this is the recording from Vancouver, but the recording that we made in Los Angeles, there the whole the ending is almost for about 4 minutes. It is an obsessive return to the single word Vismad, 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 and it keeps happening for a very, very long time. It was actually wonderful to be working in both Los Angeles and thereafter in Los Angeles. We were invited by the family of the Kashyap's and we stayed with them, and the entire recording that we made there was in their kind of basement, which what we call a home studio, though it is not a home studio. But there we recorded with this wonderful sort of sound engineer, Ishan Kashyap, who is an alumni of a very important university in Boston. I'm forgetting the name of the university. Maybe Harvard or one such university. And it was a pleasure working there for about 7 days without a clear direction and a clear mandate as to what we were going to record. Guru Nanak was just one of the things that we recorded, but there is a lot else we recorded. We recorded, Shiva and Parvati ki shadi. We recorded Heer Ranjha. We recorded many other things. But when we went to Vancouver, the project was very clearly Guru Nanak, and the idea was to take it to the Space Center in Vancouver, Macmillan's Space Center, and that's where we were performing. Before that, we were recording this entire thing in a studio, and I think it was the very next day that perhaps we were performing there. And it was and all these recordings that you're hearing are a single take recording. Nothing has been sort of, added or subtracted from them.
So it was live. Sorry, Pritam, just a second. Pritam, Rupi wants to come in. He needs your help in Vancouver.
Okay, but I can't see any request for the entry.
Okay.
I have to get a request for the entry over here at the participants zone.
He can just click on that reference which has been given, na? We have sent him a Zoom meeting reference.
Yeah, so he has to click on that.
Just that, nothing
else.
else.
Send him a message, ठीक है.
Yeah.
हाँ, आप बता रहे थे कुछ कि हाँ. प्रीतम भाई, आप कुछ कह रहे थे.
We were saying that that in the studio we have hardly, we were not rehearsing at all, and it was like we performed totally live, though we sat on a very different enclosures. I mean one point is that as well, that we were not seeing each other enough, because Amjad Bhai was in a different room, Deepak Bhai was in a different room, me and Chacha was in a different room. So we didn't have the eye contact of the stage. It is at times it is difficult to record like that, but it went like magic because the sound and Ruby Singh ji, who was recording us, it was so, and we could hear us so clearly and so fantastic tone that we were getting out of our headphones. So we could see each other through that sound, and it just flown through. That's it.
I have one question to ask, which is obviously the recordings and a lot of the, obviously there was a lot of innovation that you were doing along your travels. So if we want to think back to the time when Guru Nanak was composing the Aarti, so let's imagine Puri, right? So did you need to make that journey to being outside of what is contemporary India in order to record this? I mean, so I'm not talking about politics here, of course, but of course Nanak was being very political, and he did it through commentary of the social.
Absolutely.
So I'm asking you basically to comment a little bit about the kind of creation that's come out of this recording as something that was part of a journey of your own, leaving what's going on in India and then looking back, as he sat outside of the Jagannath temple and composed Aarti. How did you see this project in terms of recording it outside of India now?
Well, in my case, it's very clearly, it had to do with my childhood. We were brought up in a kind of a refugee colony in Delhi, in Karol Bagh. And I distinctly remember the year 1969, which was the 500th year birth anniversary of Guru Nanak. And my father was commissioned to do a kind of a feature on the national program of All India Radio on Guru Nanak. That is the time when I first heard as a child the Aarti sung by Pai Santa Singh. And kind of, a resonance of that can be found in the composition that I eventually created. That is the one that we have included, one of the Aartis that we've included here. It stayed with me for a long time, but it also had another very fascinating aspect, that Pai Santa Singh had a very close friend who was a pioneering film music composer. And his name was Ustad Ghulam Haider. And he was one of the top of the line music composers in the late 40s. In fact, he was the person who is said to have discovered Lata Mangeshkar ji. Now, it is a very strange combination again, not so strange though. I mean, here is again a Muslim and a Sikh coming together. And between the two of them, they shared a very deep bond. And a lot of Pai Santa Singh's music had to do with influences that he imbibed from Ustad Ghulam Haider Sahab. In our case, this thing actually sort of stayed with me for a long time. And then the Aarti always sort of, I was a bit sort of, reluctant to sing it, because I'll tell you why. I'm a little scared of the purism which is attached to a certain kind of music. And there are, friends who would think that as somebody who's not initiated into music, one shouldn't actually be tinkering with stuff which is not just classical, but in a sense, it is meta-classical. But I have always thought that Guru Nanak, his persona is the persona of a traveler. And if you are traveling, and if you're creating in between languages, if you're dialoguing with people, if you're going to the house of Pai Lalo, if you are then the kind of sort of the larger cultural space that you're creating is the space of dialogue. It is the space which is in a sense sort of not entirely comfortable with the kind of purity and purism that we keep sort of owning or laying claim to by way of highly sort of civilized ownership. So in my case, one was this spirit which is a wandering spirit, And therefore, journey is important. In fact, whenever I traveled to Iran, and I traveled there with, I was traveling in the interiors of Iran with Shahram Nazeri. When I traveled to Pakistan, when I traveled to Bangladesh, and looking at Bangladesh from above and looking at an entire geography, which is sort of geography of riverscapes and so on and so forth. So the whole idea of the imaginaries that I have lived with are the imaginaries of travel. And the idea of traveling with friends like Deepak Bhai, this is our 26th year or 27th year together.
Yeah, 27th.
27th. And Pritam Bhai and Amjad Bhai traveling together and discussing so many things. Indeed, not just eating together. Eating together is wonderful. In fact, they cook. Once in a while, you will find Amjad Bhai cooking something, or Pritam Bhai not cooking so much, but he is very good at cleaning up the kitchen and washing utensils. Deepak Bhai is a great cook. So cooking, eating, discussing, traveling together, and things emerging on the road, and so on and so forth. In fact, a lot of this happened in your house also. I mean, if you, we've never actually shared it with you, but a lot of it. In fact, I remember that one particular evening, which remains a very resonant evening, where you and your daughters, your beautiful daughters, sang together the old compositions of Pai Chand, Pai Ghulam Muhammad Chand Sahab. That was a fantastic evening, and it remained with me. I still, sort of, once in a while, I sing those compositions whenever I feel nostalgic. So all this wouldn't have been possible if I was only staying in that refugee colony, though refugee colony has those formative years, as formative years. I remember, there was in that Naiwalan where I lived, there used to be a mechanic who was a refugee from Lahore. And he'd made some money. So I remember for the first time, this mechanic inviting the young Salamat Ali Nazakat Ali to his house to sing in that refugee colony. And they're not singing classical music. They're singing Punjabi folk. And people who are listening to them. So these histories will never get written. See, today when we speak about the history of music in Delhi, we speak about Gandharva Vidyalaya, or we speak about Thakar Sahab, we speak about the great contribution of the DCM people and the great sort of Kayast and Bania lobby that shifted to the civil lines and so on and so forth. But there are always these other histories which are completely sort of, forgotten. In my family, I know, for instance, that my mother and my dadi, early morning around 5 o'clock, in sort of, those very, very severe winters, they are getting up 4:30, 5, and they are reciting under their breath a melody, and we are all asleep. So there is a lot that we imbibe also in sleep. So these melodies have come to us through dreams. So there is this dreamscape also. There is landscapes. There is the landscape, the mindscape of the cosmos. So there are many imaginaries that we are sort of living with. When I go to, for instance, when I was working on this film called Khamosh Pani, and I was in a village called Wah for about almost 2 months, which is where Guru Nanak also stayed. I am thinking of this Aarti so many times. I'm looking at the sky and I'm looking at this Gurudwara, and I'm wondering, what Guru Nanak was doing so close to Takshila. So there is a kind of sort of, this not just a restless spirit. This is a spirit in continuous dialogue, in a continuous remolding of the self, a reinvention of the self. Wonderful. And all this music that we do, I mean, we are nothing. We are just humble musicians. At least I am. These three are trained musicians. But nothing of this would have been ever possible if I had not been dealing with very complex political questions, very complex philosophical questions, very complex existential questions. So when I look at Guru Nanak, I'm not looking at Guru Nanak only as a reformist. I am also looking at Guru Nanak as a traveler, as a seeker, as a person who is in a continuous state of dialogue, who wants to understand the other and who wants to take his self to the other and to sort of, see how the self and the other can become one. I mean, it's an amazing, amazing feel. Whether I'm in Iran or in England or in Canada or in New Zealand or in Australia or in Bangladesh, this is just amazing, amazing. There is no other way I can think of myself singing all this music. I mean, it is an act of daring for a person like me because I have no training in music. Absolutely none. It is just the desire of somebody who wants to be in a mode of dance, who wants to be in a melodic mode. I have learned this from Baba Bulleh Shah much later. Jis tan lagya ishq kamal, nache besur te betal. So I'm beyond caring. So, because this wondrous sense of ishq has touched my soul. And I'm dancing a little out of step, and I'm singing a little out of tune. And I want to share all this with the world. Of course, this is the political act, but this is also an existential act. Very, very, see, the political act is a larger subjectivity, but also a personal subjectivity. But beyond that, it is also the question of being, which is now faced with the inscrutable. I mean, I'm looking at this vast space that I don't understand. So I am standing at an edge with a whole lot of social, relations at my back, a grid that I am a part of, but also a larger grid that I don't understand at all. This is the most fascinating part of Baba Nanak ji. And I think this is also the political intent. Deepak bhai, aap kuch kehna chahte the?
No, I was just nodding my head.
I think we nearly are.
We're nearly out of time, actually.
I actually had to say the one thing, Madanji, while you're speaking, is that Amjad Bhai is he's keeping the rhythm for you there, even though it's on mute. You might be out of step, but in fact, you've got someone who's really watching your rhythm.
I think we have one more track to play. If
we have just one short track, and after that you can conclude. It's about 40 seconds.
Pritam?
Thank you. Yeah, we almost should have played that one in the very beginning also. I mean, this has been a real pleasure. I'm just thanking everyone for joining today. And of course, this has been the launch of the album. But I feel like we should also give an idea of where people can listen to it and where they can find it, or if the Facebook page is the easiest place for people to find it. Does Pritam or Deepak want to?
Pritam, where is our songs?
Yes, it has been shared at the Chariyar page, and it is going to share at the Deepak Bhai's, Madanji's, mine, Amjad Bhai's, and the Chariyar's page. You can find it over there. There will be some link which you can click, and it will straight take you to there. Either it is Amazon Music or Apple Music or Spotify or whichever way. You can go there and listen and enjoy the tracks.
Thank you. I mean, I think it's a beautiful sound. You just listening to the samples and having heard you over the years, it's a beautiful collection. Actually, you can't even call it an album, and it's a journey in itself. I think from what you and the way it's been a real pleasure to speak to all of you about it. And I hope, you know, those of you who've been able to attend, been able to listen and enjoy, and we should also kind of get a hold of it beyond. And I think during what's going on in the world around us today in the UK, we're beginning first day of a month-long lockdown. So I know what I'll be listening to in the background as I'm doing my things and keeping indoors. But thank you all very much for joining and listening today. And I thank Yar for sharing your musical creativity with us, and wishing you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.